see what the let's go to the relationship part. Okay, on the second side. So let me quickly give an example what a relationship means. Basically, no matter irrespective of like number of variables involved, okay, in a relationship plot, what we are trying to see is there any correlation, okay, between the two variables that I am trying to plot. So for example, just a general and very common example would be if the average temperature per day, if it is increasing, how are my ice cream sales changing with respect to my change in average temperature per day. So obviously we can see any general trend. Hey, if my temperature is increasing, there is a slight increment in my sales of ice creams, and likewise. So this is the type of relationships that we will try to extract from the data. When we are trying to extract this sort of data, we will go with the relationship plots. So let's quickly go to Tableau and see a couple of examples there as well. Let's create just a new tab, and just give me a minute. Okay, and we'll connect to again world indicators dataset. Let me just go to take my I have few few metrics from the environmental perspective, like energy usage and CO2 emissions metric. So it will be a good question to ask, hey, if my energy usage is going normally higher, are my emissions, CO2 emissions, are they going higher or lower? So it's a generic and good question to ask. So what I'll do is I'll put my one of these variables on x-axis, sum of my energy usage, okay, and I'll take my other variable on my y-axis, click OK, and I want to take a look at it from the country point of view. As of now, it's just aggregating for all the countries, and let me just put my country in detail. So I can see, so now each point is a country. It represents a certain country. So as you can see, obviously, let's just rearrange the axis in a way it's more readable. So on x-axis we have energy usage, and I can see that clearly as my energy consumption per country, if it is increasing, my CO2 emissions per country is also increasing. This is the trend that we see. So this is what a relationship plot normally is supposed to convey, trends between two or more variables. And let's just quickly see one other example of the same, and move on to the other types of charts. Okay, let's just open new sheet, and we have few other metrics here talking about internet usage and few tourism inbound and tourism outbound. So internet usage is basically, it's a metric that shows what percentage of the population in a certain country is accessible to internet or using internet, and tourism inbound is basically amount of currency value that in dollars, basically that particular country has tourists visiting that particular country, and the tourist outbound is basically tourists that are going out of that country. So let's quickly see. So this is also a good question to ask. If there is countries that are using more internet, how is the tourism affecting those countries where there is more internet usage, and how is the tourism affecting where there is less internet usage? So let's just drag this internet usage into our columns. Just go there and drag my tourism inbound into y-axis, and also just take tourism outbound as well, and maybe put my country into detail. Let me just show some. Just a minute, just checking a few things. Okay. So this is how we have few metrics again, internet usage on x-axis and tourism inbound and outbound on y-axis. So the top chart that we see there, we can see that so obviously the general trend we can see wherever there is higher consumption of internet usage in that country, basically we can see that the tourism is slightly greater there, either inbound or outbound. So yeah, so these sort of relations, when we are trying to answer these sort of questions between variables, this is when scatter plots or like this will be helpful and more appropriate to use. And the other variant we have under the same relationship sections is that when there are 3 or more variables involved. So as of now, till now, we only looked at 2 variables in each chart. So just one on x-axis and one on y-axis. Let's say if there is one other metric that we want to simultaneously find out the relation for. In that case, let's take for example GDP. I want to see, I know each point represents a certain country, and I want to see tourism inbound and internet usage and GDP, all these three relations between all these three variables simultaneously. In that case, what option we have is there are other aesthetic elements to a chart. So something like a color or size, we can use these marks to basically get this third variable involved into that chart. So for example, see if what happens if I drop GDP to size. Let me change this to actually select all and drop GDP here and change this to circle. Yeah, so now we got the GDP also taken into account. So we can see that all the countries where, so now all the combinations of between these three variables is relations between these three variables. So it will be like some 3C2 combinations. So those many combinations we can identify 3C2 by 2, something like that. So we can see the countries which have higher internet usage percentage, they tend to be on the higher side of the GDP, whereas all others have on the just lower GDPs. They're just in negligible dots here we can see. And obviously the other result that we saw, higher internet usage, higher tourism. So yeah, so these sort of visualizations, and you can also use color for some other metric to pull in Tableau. So that's also possible. So if we can just take CO2 emissions and put that in color. So now we have 4 variables that are yeah, but it's unless it is required, it's not recommended to go with more than 4 or more than 4. So wherever very rare cases we come across the situations where we have to include all the 4, but it is normally recommended to go with only 3 at max at a time, and use either color or size for the third variable. Okay, so that is on the distribution and relationships so far. So just want any questions on these 2 particular types of charts so far?
Yeah, Jagdish, for relationship, both are scatter plots only, right?
Yes, both are scatter plots.
Variables 3. Okay.
Yes.
Just that we are using size and color for different variables.
Yeah, for right. So whenever it is more than 3 or 3, we'll just use the other attribute, either size or color, to get the third dimensional involved in the plot.
Okay.
Just to add on the relationship point, right? We can also have a correlation line shown on the graph saying we can visually see what is the degree of the correlation that we have, whether it's a strong correlation or a weak correlation, whether it's positive or negative.
Right.
And yeah,
so something like this, right?
Yes, exactly.
So something like this.
This is on. And if you just hover over that line, it will also show you the regression equation as well. Okay. Yeah, that's on. So so it has that R squared, and it has that P value, which tells you whether that correlation is significant or not.
Correct. So yeah, so that's a good point, Sai. So we'll get back to this in some other session in more detail. We'll understand what those P value and R square mean and how to interpret those values later. Okay.
Jagadish,
Yep.
Shravan. So in a relationship, there are two things, right? Two variable and three variable.
Yeah.
So actually, in first two variable, we considered sum of this tourism inbound and outbound as a one variable, or these are three variables.
No, so when we are talking about number of variables, we need to look at number of variables per chart. Okay, so here we have two charts, one chart on the top and one chart below, and for each chart there are only two variables. So if we take top chart, on x-axis we have internet usage variable, on y-axis we have tourism inbound variable. I mean, if I go to the if I remove all this size, voila. Okay, if I remove the size, now I have only two variables, x-axis and y-axis. And for the bottom chart also, I have only internet usage and tourism outbound. It's like having two separate charts. It's just that they are distinct. On the top chart is giving in tourism inbound, and the bottom chart is giving tourism outbound related information on the y-axis. Okay, so that's on the relation side.